It says that I am live. So, hello, how are you? Well, I wasn't planning on doing a show tonight, but what I saw this morning, hold on one second, was this. And well, there's seven of us. So, how is everybody? I can't see everyone in the chat room, so I don't know if there's anyone in there. But anyway, I digress. uh, Hello, everyone. So here is the deal. Actually, I saw Chip and Joanne as a commercial. Wow, that's impressive. They think that Chip and Joanne's a good commercial for our audience. Well, I agree with them. So, again, how are you? I just got finished doing a great program with Rex Bear over at the Leak Project. Spent nearly 2 hours with Rex on this subject. And so I'd encourage you to go over. If you're not a subscriber to Rex, you should be. And you can watch the full interview. We got into a lot of material. And it's amazing, again, it's like, now I'm not a weaver, excuse me, but I think if I was, you could see how everything is connected. And it's getting, well, apparently either more connected or more colors. I'm not rightly sure how you want to pin this. So, want to talk about what is coming. Apparently, what we are hearing, and I want to go over here. So, I came across this article. All eyes are on Jerusalem. And the publication was The Trumpet. Can you believe that? I mean, seriously, that's just talk about ironic. Anyway, the article goes on to say it was 50 year anniversary for Jerusalem being united, not divided. Well, it says on December 23rd, the United States broke with its traditional role as Israel protector, and it goes on talking about the UN. But here's the deal. The Trump administration today announced that they're going to be making a announcement that they're moving the US embassy to Israel. Now, this is not good. It's not good for anybody. Um, it will divide Jerusalem. And my background as in the Christian faith, biblical prophecy, plays a major role. You look for the signs, you try to interpret the signs, and then you try to put the signs into a construct that everyone stays focused in on. Now, I'm not so much into the book of Revelation. I think that, and no matter how you look at it. However, I do believe that the Hebrews have a covenant with their God. Absolutely believe that. History would prove that I would be on the right side of that of interpretation. So, ever since we can look into the modern era would be 1947 when Israel came together, where the UN voted to give that state, that region, to the survivors of the Holocaust and as a homeland for all Jewish tribes around the world. And it was much heralded and celebrated that this was the rebirth of Israel. Perfectly fine with that. Again, my position is that the Old Testament is for the Hebrews, the Jewish people. It wasn't written for the Gentiles. Anyway, I digress. So, after the desolation of Titus in 70 AD and the subsequent destruction of Jerusalem that laid as a barren wasteland for nearly 1,000 years when you really look at it. It was taken over as a territory in about 600 AD, maybe a little bit earlier, by the Muslims. And it basically, from there, the history is self-apparent. So when Israel became a nation again, it was always debated what would be the capital. Tel Aviv is where it has been, and Jerusalem is where they want it to be. And of course, everyone knows, as you can see, this is interesting because Zechariah 12 has been one of those scriptures that, everyone has looked at, and a lot has been based upon that. I'll let you read it and let you draw your own conclusions. So let me get back here. Hello. So when it was announced today, and it hasn't been official yet, but apparently the Trump administration has made the decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, it's going to have a lot of blowback. It really is. And one of the reasons why is this. Let me show you. I actually have something here for you. Okay. I can't do it that way. It's these technical issues, So give the guy who's behind the scenes as he powers it up. There we go. Now I can go back over here. You see, you don't understand. This is a real ride for us. So there you go. Because I think the graphics are as important to see what's going to happen here. So here is, I think it's a perfect picture for what is about to happen. I mean, if the U.S. moves the embassy there, it signifies a change in the capital, right? And apparently, Erdogan of Turkey has said, don't even think about it. You do this, and he says, you're crossing the line. So, what are we going to have? On the Rex Bear show, as Rex and I were talking, we were discussing the fact that, how many of you remember the Berlin Wall? I do. Now, I was just, when the blockade started, I think that was in, how many help me here? I think it's 61, 62? I know someone in here can remember that as well. Hold me 1 second here as I get out of here. There we go. I'm in the chat room here, so I'm just looking. Wow, 95 people in here. Wayne, I've been thinking about all of this. Which brother is behind this? Inyel or Enki? Good question, Kit. If I could give you a virtual coffee, I would. So, yeah. let's talk about this. So I'm glad everyone is kind of in sync. So I'm watching in the chat room, and very interesting. We move our embassy there. That then divides the wall. Here's what Rex and I were talking about and what I brought out to his audience. And my deep concern is this. All right, we move the capital there. This begins to force the hands, particularly of the Russians. And if you study Putin, I have said, and if y'all remember the video I did about Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Antarctica, there was an article the next day, and I saved it, and I don't want to pull it up right now because I save a lot of stuff. I need to go to the file. But anyway, you can see it for yourself. Putin was involved with the Orthodox Church of Russia. And the article went to point out how Putin is, well, I wouldn't know if making a gesture of what, but a defender of Russia's beliefs. Now, Russia, as we all know, is a supporter of Syria and Assad. We have the new regime in Palestine who depend a lot on the Russians. And we've had this kind of uneasy detente. This is going to push everything over the edge. And part of what I was telling Rex, and here's my concern, I'll just lay it out to you. I know the people that is advising Trump from a spiritual perspective. And this is just me, my own opinion, and my own kind of gut check on this, is that this is right up that agenda of forcing a prophecy to come to pass. Now, I understand that there can be many different views and opinions on this. But here's the thing. If you're going to, there's nothing wrong in having a faith. Nothing wrong with that at all. But as the president, your spiritual advisors, I think, should be, how shall we say, diverse in its makeup. That it shouldn't be skewed to one particular ideology. Because when you have people who are, and I'm being very careful on my words, that would like to see something come to pass, and this is an opportunity to have influence with the world's leader. And the question is, why? Why do this? I mean, it's kind of like taking a stick, and I've seen this actually happen, hitting a hornet's nest. I mean, you know the hornet's nest is there, right? Why would you want to go up and in any way mess with the nest to begin with? I mean, but that's about the equivalent of what we're about to do here. And if this happens, then I see a certain chain of events, and I will explain to you what I see happening. It's going to have an impact on the world. I think politically, obviously. But my deep concern is that this brings in now just cause for a religious war. Because let's all face it, Jerusalem is claimed by both of the major religions. And since we know that that is the case, it brings the whole Temple Mount into the equation. And quite frankly, I mean, it's again, I wrote a novel. Haven't finished it because, quite frankly, it's called The Start. I know you're going to probably have some comments, but I started this back in 2002, 2003. And in one of the chapters of the book was how the destruction of the Temple Mount. I had a number of other things in there as well. And what I was writing about was actually kind of coming to pass. So I quit writing in it. But I got about 3/4 of the way through, and it was very interesting. So I digressed here a little bit. So we have the Temple Mount. Now, no matter what happens here, that will always have to be dealt with. You can't shut the second most holiest site to a religion. Just not going to work. So let's say that the Trump administration makes the decision to put the U.S. embassy there. Well, it's going to start a whole cascading effect. Now, does this agitate the relationships now with Syria and Israel? I think so. I think that this would have a devastating effect with the internal politics of Israel. I think they would become as divided as the United States is. And you can see how all this division, and who knows? So let's say they move the embassy to Jerusalem. So let's say something like April, I don't know, 14th, there's a earthquake that goes from the Mount of Olives and heads up. What happens then? Now you really got something, and that's just a hypothetical. Maybe I shouldn't even have said that. Come to think about it. Okay, moving right on along. But seriously, it just puts another factor into this. And I don't know if the world can actually handle another situation. I mean, I firmly am convinced, I don't know about you, that we are going to do a first strike against North Korea. I mean, ideally, I think it would be great if they could take the guy out, remove the equation. Don't think that's going to happen. I don't. We've moved too much assets over there. How many of you caught the article over the weekend that we have moved 233 jets of all different classes over there? You know, that's that's not cheap. I mean, the U.S. taxpayers footing the bill, but someone's got to be accountable for it, right? I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. Got 3 carrier groups over there. That's unprecedented. I think I read somewhere that if you total all the assets of the 3 carrier groups, along with what we have on the ground and what we have in the base of Guam, it's something like over 1,500 pieces of military equipment, meaning aircraft. That's crazy, folks. That's a lot of buildup. And if, in fact, there is a strike by the Trump administration on North Korea, there are words out that they've given a 72-hour kind of heads up. They kind of gave us the heads up about a month ago when it was the headlines that they came out and said the shortage of pilots and that the Trump administration was recalling nearly 2,000 pilots. Well, you have to have pilots to fly the planes, and you have to have planes for the pilots to fly. Seems like they met that equation up now. I don't like any of this because, again, we set into a scenario of a whole lot of what ifs. And then I think about, well, then what does this do to the equation of, let's say, the current mounting tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran? Is the old Arab proverb that my enemy becomes my friend? Does this give a cause for enemies to give pause to focus on a new enemy? This case would be us. I don't know. I don't like what I'm seeing, to be candid with you. And I think any time that you start bringing in a interpretation of an ancient document, I mean, I don't know about you. The reason why I started studying Philo was that I wanted to know what was the mind like of a first century person. And Philo, for me, was the perfect entree for that. I found Flavius Josephus suspect. And quite frankly, his writing is of a style that, well, I don't know how he called himself a historian. Oh, he called himself an historian. That's why he was an historian. Whereas Philo was just, he was a philosopher. He was a thinker. So my point being, I don't know what a guy living in about 500 BC, I don't know what his mind would be like. I can read his words, but I have no idea as to his perception. Now, did he hear something? Did he receive something? I believe that. As I said, I believe they have a covenant. They have a covenant, the Hebrew people. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I do believe that they do have a covenant with this deity. And there's a vested interest, obviously. So, does this fulfill a prophecy spoken, nearly 2,500 years ago? That's a long time to wait for a prophecy to come to pass. But it would appear that that would be the case. You know, Jerusalem has always been the hemorrhoid for every administration since the 50s. It's always been a problem. Every president that has tried to broker a peace deal has failed. So are we seeing just the opposite strategy here taking place? Like, screw the peace deal. If there's ever going to be a peace deal, let's give them really something to have an issue with. I don't know. Again, I don't like the influence that a man is getting through an interpretation based upon a particular dogma of the Christian faith. I just don't think that that's wise. So I believe that this is going to be a game changer. They do it, then I think 2018 was already going to be a very interesting year. This one, I think, just ratchets it up even more. The thought of it, as I was telling Rex's audience, there was a time when I was a part of a very conservative, organization. And there are ideologies that are part of our government that drive agendas. And sometimes those agendas are very self seeking and self serving, kind of leaving the rest of us out. And I don't like when I begin to see something that is this volatile. Listen, the thing in North Korea, that was going to come to an inevitable confrontation one way or the other. It's just the way it is. It's regrettable that it has gone this way. Rex and I were talking, and here is something I want to put out there. I think you win the hearts and the minds of an oppressed people through their stomachs. And I think in the case particularly of the North Korean population, that if you could take the problem out strategically and remove the threat, because the last thing anyone on this planet needs is another nation with a nuclear weapon. It's just crazy. The fact that we have nuclear weapons at all is crazy. But here, you've got one of these mad scenarios that no matter what you do is not going to be a good choice. But you can't turn a blind eye to it. I mean, I think we ought to all be grateful, since basically kind of the ceasefire that took place, and it was never an ending of hostilities. It was just a ceasefire. That's what the DMZ is. And, Kim's father, he knew how to bargain well. And his extortion worked, made him a very wealthy man, and it kept him in power because the world fed his people. Well, the dynamics have changed. And now you have a son who, well, he doesn't live in a real world. And now we got a situation that none of us like to have to deal with it. But this is serious. And we have to discuss this thing because it's tied in to what I think could possibly happen with this move of the embassy. I mean, at what point does the proverbial back of the camel get broken? What one more crisis or potential crisis? When we did that emotion chart yesterday, and anyone who wants that, let me know. I'll be more than happy to email it to you. But where we saw how the emotions reigned, right? Anticipation, terror, boredom, right? It's just a strange thing that we're dealing with. And I don't know about you, but it's like today where you almost, have you ever had ants crawl up your leg? Now, I used to live in the South in Texas, and I don't know how many of y'all know what fire ants are. Guarantee you that if you ever gotten bit and stung by one, you'll never forget the feeling because it's one that stays with you. But it's kind of like having ants crawl up your thigh of your leg, and it's just, it's just like you're waiting for it to happen. And then what you're waiting for to happen, that ain't what's happening. Because what's happening is, we got this going on. And you go, well, wait a minute. I only got enough to stay anticipating that. Now you're bringing this. And then, no doubt, this just sets off another chain of reaction. I still say we need to watch Putin. We really do. I think this guy's going to play a far, far bigger role. So as you can see, that's what I was bringing out here. Let me just go into the chat room. See how y'all be doing. Okay. Fire ants everywhere. Yes, yes. See, I will vote for food too. Laverne, I see that. I think that if you had enough food, I think if you had chocolate chip cookies, I think that that would ride alone. I mean, again, I think if you could take the top of the problem out, I think we could help these people in such a way that maybe they're not as brainwashed as before. Hello, Amanda B. How are you? Hello, Eastern Command. One, how are you doing? Boy, I tell you what, I am going to do speed reading right now. Well, Patriot for Life, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thank you. See, I think cookies is really the thing. Mushrooms. Hi, Chris. L74, good to see you. Thank you for stopping in. But seriously, I think that if maybe if they listen to our shows, right, someone could put a note in front of someone and say, hey, you know, we heard these people on this channel over here. They're talking chocolate chip cookies. I think peanut butter and jelly. I don't know about you. I mean, I've been hungry before. I know what that feels like. Lived with my mother and lived with my dad, but hunger with my mother was a real thing. I could always remember one summer, we lived upstairs in a fourplex in St. Louis, and the people downstairs would fry eggs in the morning with bacon. You know, for a hungry kid, I mean, that was just torture. So my point is, if someone is hungry, I think a chocolate chip cookie, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with milk is a good way to start brokering a new relationship. We could be onto something. Who knows, folks? All of us, right? All of us, we could be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. What do you think about that? If we got the Nobel Peace Prize, why, we could just do a whole lot of good in that. I don't know if they would nominate, I don't know what they would call us, deep thinkers. We certainly challenge the status quo, wouldn't we? So that was my commentary for tonight. I am concerned. One of the things I can tell you that Rex was asking about a lot of other things. You know, there's the whole issue with this debt. And I don't know about you. I don't like the idea of another $1 trillion, $1 trillion freaking dollars. At one time, I was a registered lobbyist. And I learned how the system worked in Washington, D.C. Got very involved in politics. At one time, I was a Democrat. And then when Reagan came in, because after going through Jimmy Carter, it was like, oh, crap, you know. But anyway, I digress. So I got involved in politics, you know, and the idea of $1 trillion back then was mind-blowing. And today, when you think about it, we're going to add another $1 trillion. You ever get the feeling like they're not planning on paying that back? I mean, how much can just, and this is true to all the people around the world, how much more do we continue to pay for the privilege of the elite? I don't know. No, that's going to get me in trouble. But anyway, it's all connected. And at some point, what I don't like about this, it's simple physics. We have, let me see. There we go. All right. Do you see this? This is the balance of where we stand. I would say that this is the collective consciousness of humanity. And we try to keep this thing like this, right? What we're doing now is that we're adding more potential breaking points along what was at one time an ability that it could go right or left, but we always kept the balance. And that's what I see happening. And at some point along that tensile strength is going to collapse. And the problem is that when you add more potential stress points, then it only takes one of those small stress points to collapse that collapses the whole thing. And that's what I see. It's part of this journey that we're on. And as much as I want to see things in the most peaceful way, we don't know. We're not, you and I are not sitting in those heavily wooded meeting rooms. Y'all ever been there? Any of you been to the Raven building, or when you've ever gone to DC? Try to see your senator. The congressman, if you're a junior congressman, you're getting the office next to the crapper. But the Senate, and those, when you get to sit in those rooms, you've got that old wood, that old cherry wood. Y'all know what I mean? And it has that smell. Once you smell it, you'll never forget it. How many of you know that? Let me just kind of giving you a little bit of mine. I love this. I'm just looking at this. All right. So the previous break was by the guy who's driving this bus. Would you watch where we're going? So anyway, it's just one of those things. I'm going to tell you what. I am going to pull up an article while we're going to this, because I think I want to put in something positive about this. I mean, I really do, because I want to show you an article that I found today. Give me 1 second. Maybe it's over here. I'm looking for something, folks. There she be. Okay. All right. I want to show you this article. Y'all want to see this? So check this out. Where Silicon Valley is going to get in touch with its soul. I grew up as a hippie. I mean, back then, is this because you got called a hippie because you had long hair? But in my case, I was an entrepreneur at a very early age. I sold natural herbs and helped people out. But anyway, the point is this. Check this out. So I'm reading this. Now, we'd all love to go to Big Sur. I can get this. But apparently, guess what, folks? The technology is depriving them of their souls. And my whole point to this is, here's Ben, founder, a former Google product manager, became Esalon's executive director this year. Anyway, they're going out to get away. Of course, technology is still there. But the fact is, they're trying to get in touch with their soul. See, this I interpret as a ray of light. This tells me that AI may think that it can dominate us, but we got something inside of us that's always going to draw us back to Mother Earth. And at the fact that they say that if you live long enough, you'll see history repeat itself. Now, I was doing this back in the early 70s. We would go to the sweat lodges. We would do our vision quest. We would begin to get in touch with ourselves. And here we are. As I look at this now, nearly 50 years later, and it's right back to where we were going. Now, listen, that would naturally put you into a state of mind. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, there's nothing more refreshing to my soul than to hear the ocean. Did a lot of business in San Diego, and I always loved going over to Coronado Island. And it was just beautiful. And hearing the waves, I don't know about for you, but for myself, I immerse myself into that energy. Anyway, I digress. So we have this whole thing going on, right? So I'm just going to stop right back in. So I think that this is what gives me hope about where we're going. I mean, it tells me that we can make it. I really do. Hello, Soul Journey. How are you doing? Hello, Jessica. Good to see you. Mr. Floyd, good to see you. Jennifer, good to see you. Jeff. So this is what tells me that maybe somewhere along the line, someone's going to get this figured out like we are. I mean, all of us would love to have, I think, the wealth and success. But as I told Rex, wealth, there's an old proverb that says that a rich man gets no sleep at all, but a poor man sleeps soundly. It says that a poor man eats in peace and a rich man eats in contentions. And I happen to think that that's right. I can't tell you how many times I have been screwed over because of money. And I look back at this, and there was a time where I would have just been, well, they used to say I was like a junkyard dog that had just gotten a fresh bone. To be like the ant down in South America, the army ant. You can chop its head off and it ain't letting go, right? But something's changed. I mean, to me, that weighs the soul down is what it does. And it's so, and it affects everything. And not having enough brings on a same set of energy, just a different side. And I just don't know when we'll ever get out of that cycle. I don't know. Boy, have I digressed. Oh, my apologies on that. But maybe that just needed to be said. I'll just take it at that and get back onto the subject matter. But it's true. I mean, no matter how this plays out, everyone wants to see what's going to happen in 2018. And if all of us were to take a list of what we anticipate to happen, what we've heard others who can see is going to happen, and then put that in an envelope and put it somewhere where you wouldn't see it until this time next year. And then to get that list out and to see how much actually did happen. And then we put a new column in of what actually did happen. Now, I'd be curious to see how the statistics would work on that. Would we have, for instance, a greater ratio of things not happening, things that in fact did happen, or on the side of things that weren't even expected? I don't know this, but instinct tells me it's probably going to be column number 3 is what I think it's going to be. But I don't know. Maybe someone will do that. We'll see that. So anyway, tomorrow night we'll be over on Jeff's channel, the Christian Whistleblower. I know that I talked to Rex, and it looks like he is going to the event down there in Clearwater. Might be something if y'all are in that area and can make it down there. It could be something to see. I'd like to go myself, but unfortunately, it just was not going to happen. So, having said that, I will let you know that I will be having Trish Gilder, I believe, will be on the Sunday program on my channel. And I'm looking forward to it. Trish lives in England. Her accent would never say that, but I've been told that I have an accent. Go figure, right? By the way, I have a very special friend. I can't say who it is, but has just provided me with some fascinating information that I'm going to be sharing with us on Friday night. And, our history is not always what we have been taught. We know that. And when you find something that is even more detailed, particularly in what I would call key aspects, good data that, you're going like, well, why didn't you put that in there to begin with? And it's interesting because you see, when we talk about the events in Jerusalem, I call that post-modern expectation. Again, I don't know Zechariah and where his head was at. I'm sure if I met the dude, he would say, I was effing out of my mind. And I would probably say he's whacked out as his. Who knows? Or maybe we would both find it so amusing that the mind coitus would be enticing for a good conversation. Who knows? I know this, Zechariah, in my early days, was the one who gave me some of my best clues that there was something more that wasn't being reported here. And if you read Zechariah, I think Zechariah 6, maybe 8, I'm not sure. But it talks about Sumer. It talks about the UFOs. I went, wow. Okay. Now he described it as a flying scroll. Like I said, I don't know what a 500 BC mind would think like. But I know this, whether it was a flying scroll or a flying saucer, we would describe it in how we interpreted things. So you got to look at that. And so when I think about what's happening today, it still doesn't negate what we haven't been told. And who knows? Maybe there's a whole thing here that, we haven't been told. Maybe there's a whole element that has been left out, and all we are is observers. We're basically watching cause and effect. Now, many of you, I know this because you write me and I see your comments. You're on this journey as well. And truth seekers, of which we are, all of you are, and everyone that watches these videos for the most part are. Now, there's some who are not, but I always look at it like this. If they're not there, they're on their way. They wouldn't be here to begin with. But for the majority of us, this is what we're looking for. And we're trying to play that, what was that game where you would put the black or white, the dots in there, trying to get 3 in a row, or what is it? Y'all know what I'm talking about? Anyway, that's how I see it. You're trying to form a pattern here, and right when you think you got the pattern, someone goes and drops in the other color. You're going, that's how I see this. And we're trying to figure this thing out. And there are some really smart people here, folks. I mean, y'all are, like I said, the great thing about this ship is that it's kind of a ship I like being on. I mean, it is. What makes it fun is that because we can discuss the thoughts that the others have, but are afraid to express. And all of us know that when we can express a fragment of that truth, that a fragment within itself can take you on a journey that you had no idea. And you realize it's just a fragment. And we're going to figure this thing out. I don't know. I really do. I think if the level of energy that we have coming into this planet, coming into our consciousness, and listen, if they're going to send Wi-Fi around us all the time, I'm trying to figure out, I said, okay, maybe we can turn this to our advantage. Maybe we could figure out collectively, I know there's engineers in here, good engineers, that we could figure out a way to maybe harness this energy. I mean, that's what it is. It's electromagnetic energy of some frequency, of some level. Anyway, that's where my mind goes. Well, this has been an enjoyable hour. I don't know about y'all. I hope it hasn't been, it's like everything else. But anyway, I'm just coming in here just to read on this. See, yeah, I'm just reading this. This is cool. Well, this is cool. Hey, I appreciate it. And I, like I said, thank you for stopping in. We'll keep the conversation lively. Well, be kind, do an act of kindness that no one else knows about. Um, that I think begins the best belief in that side of us that so often goes unnoticed. And I think it would be great that we would hear in your local city that if this thing ever got caught on, that could you imagine them doing a news report saying the city's experiencing an unusual high level of acts of kindness that no one knows who or why. Now, I think that would be kind of cool. You know, could be the answer for a lot of the stress that we have in the inner cities. Could be the answer for a lot of stress we have in the urban areas. Um, but it would do one thing for all of us. It would all make us feel better. It would all give us um, a healthy inner view of ourselves. And maybe we could start looking at others through that much improved view of ourselves. Just a thought. All right, folks, we'll see you Friday night back here tomorrow night over at Jeff's channel. And if something comes along, maybe even sooner. All right, folks, thank you.